Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to talk about various economic models in Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, every few years or so, a new economic model is held up by economists as the one to emulate. We had the German model in the 50s and the 60s. We then had the Japanese model in the 1980s, and then the US model more recently. And we've even had small countries like the Netherlands or Ireland held up as economic paragons. It ought to be said that now most of these models are in disgrace, and none of them seems to have held up particularly well to the current financial and economic crisis. But having said that, I wish to look briefly at these models and the way in which they are applied in Europe, and try and home in on some of the differences between them. I ought to preface my comments by saying that although very often people try and score political points by arguing that one model is extreme on the left and another model is very extreme to the right, all of these economic models actually try and ensure that there's a balance between individual responsibility and collective responsibility. It's just that the balance between the two is different slightly from one model to the next. But anyway, let's get on with our examination of these different economic models. We could divide Europe up into north, south, east and west. If you go to the north and you look at the north-south axis, we have the two extremes. We have the Nordic model in the north, in Sweden, Finland, Denmark, and possibly even in the Netherlands. And then in the south, we have the Mediterranean model. If we divide Europe on an east-west axis, there in the middle, we'll leave out Eastern Europe for the time being, in the middle you have the so-called Rhineland model. And that's represented by France, Belgium, Germany, Luxembourg, and Austria. Whereas further over to the west, you have the so-called Anglo-Saxon model, represented by the UK and Ireland. So what are the differences between these models? Well, one could spend a long time discussing that, but I'd just like to take two specific parameters and judge these models on how well they score achieving these particular economic goals. And these are well-known economic goals that are included in the European Union's Lisbon Agenda. And they are, first of all, to provide high levels